Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Common and Chef here with Tom Castleman. We are back after a couple weeks off. Call it a World Cup break. I was so into that. Call it a holiday break. A lot of late Christmas shopping. Go figure, Tom. But speaking of the World Cup, still celebrating the GOAT, Lionel Messi winning the World Cup. I'll definitely mention that at some point in the show. But we have a lot of good football on the docket. American football, that is. Huge game this weekend, one of the biggest of the season. Bengals, Bills. Actually, it's on Monday Night Football. We'll talk about that game. We'll preview. We'll make our picks. College football semifinals going on. Michigan, TCU, Georgia, Ohio State. If you look at the betting lines, neither game's supposed to be particularly close. And I probably agree with the spread, but we'll get into that. Betting locks, of course. Sports trivia have a good one. You'll kind of see throughout this show. I'll be giving a little love to my guys, Lionel Messi, Patrick Mahomes. It's been a few weeks. You haven't had to hear their names, Tom. No, they'll be back. But overall, I'm really excited to get going into the show. Going to be an awesome show. How are you doing today, Tom?
Doing fantastic. We are in that weird week between the Christmas holiday and New Year's where nobody's quite sure what time it is, what day it is. But for us, it is Wednesday, right around almost 1 o'clock Central, and we are back, as you said, Comment, after taking a couple of weeks off, and certainly an exciting time of year as we kind of look at the year in review.
Yes.
It's been super exciting. Of course, we're going to start out with the game of the week. At least I think it's game of the week. I think you think it's game of the week.
Question.
Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. This is going to be an AFC showdown. But of course, talking about all the great things that have happened in sports and maybe touching on some things that weren't so great in sports, or perhaps there's a little bit of bittersweetness to some of what's gone on in 2022. Definitely looking forward to that show today.
Before I get into that, 100th show also, since Salute Your Sports is back. We reunited the college show. We've been doing this, for now, about 2 years, 2.5 years. I'm losing track of time.
Something like that.
But it's our 100th show. We typically do a weekly show, but, we've skipped a few weeks. Life is busy. Unfortunately, we don't get paid to do this. We do this out of the passion and love for talking sports. So 100th show, we'll have year in review, and obviously 100 shows. Fantastic, Tom. Glad that we've gotten a chance to do this.
Absolutely. Well, we will begin, as we've mentioned off the top, with the game of the week. The Buffalo Bills are getting a much-needed reprieve from some heavy snow playing in Cincinnati. Weather still going to be cold, still going to be windy, but not necessarily super heavy on those precipitation conditions. So looking at kind of just like the Bovada line, this is where I'm getting this. Cincinnati is a home dog by 1 point. So it's pretty much close to a pick'em, which is saying that, at least the betting world believes in the Buffalo Bills as a slight favorite going on the road. And certainly they have the firepower. They're the top team in the AFC right now. But Cincinnati absolutely has something to say that they have a statement win over the Kansas City Chiefs. More important, that they have a head-to-head tiebreaker should it come to that for home field, which is also going to be at stake, because if Cincinnati is able to win this game at home against Buffalo, they will have a tiebreaker against the Buffalo Bills. The Kansas City Chiefs, they'll have the same record as the Bills, and certainly in good position heading into the last week of the season to secure the one and only bye week through the playoffs that they're going to have, and then, of course, home field advantage throughout. So, Common, how important is it, not just for home field advantage, but also for the bye week? Who does it benefit more with Cincinnati and Buffalo, and who do you think has the advantage of coming out on top in this game?
So first off, this is such a huge game for Buffalo because they are the 1 seed right now. But if they lose this game, assuming Kansas City takes care of business this week, which they will against the Broncos, right? You would think. So Buffalo can go from the 1 seed all the way to the 3 seed. So should they meet Kansas City and Cincinnati in the playoffs, which they'll probably meet one, if not both of them, they would be on the road for that. So right now, Chiefs and Bills, same record. Bengals a game behind. Bengals would have the tiebreaker on both teams due to head-to-head wins if they win. So this is an enormous game. I know we'll talk about it maybe. I'll get into picking the game first, and we'll talk about what team specifically needs the home field most between Kansas City, between Buffalo, between Cincinnati. But I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Everyone wants to build this Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes rivalry, but I think it's going to be a three-person rivalry. It's going to
Mhm.
be Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow because these guys are all here to stay. Knock on wood on injuries. We might be talking about the three best quarterbacks in the NFL for the next 10, 15 years, which would be incredible to see. So it is definitely a toss up. I'm not highly confident in this game, but I am a little bit surprised by the betting line just because I know they say that the home team typically gets 3 extra points. So if this was a neutral field, Vegas thinks the Bills are 4 points better. I don't necessarily buy that per se. I mean, look. We've got the two hottest teams in the AFC. I think the
Mhm.
Niners technically are the hottest team overall, but Bengals have won 7 straight. Bills have won 6 straight. So 1.5 point favorite, total toss up. But you look at the quarterback play. Mahomes is the best quarterback. These two guys might be the next two best. Jalen Hurts, obviously, in that discussion as well. But you look at Joe Burrow, second in the NFL in touchdown passes. Josh Allen, third in touchdown passes. But Allen has more total touchdowns because he actually has all those rushing touchdowns as well. So this is two teams that are very similar in what they do, actually. I know the Bills will get more yards total rushing because Allen rushes so much, but the Bengals are fifth in passing yards. The Bills are seventh in passing yards per game. Meanwhile, the Bills defense, for all the credit it gets, Tom, only
Mhm.
15th in the NFL against the pass. I know part of that is teams are behind. They're passing, the ball
Sure.
more late in the game. So obviously we know they're better than 15th best, but the way people talk about the Bills defense, you assume that they're top five against the pass, which they are not. The Bengals are actually 21st against the pass. Again, a lot of leads, but both teams are incredible at run defense, and they're just okay at run offense. And both teams are great at pass offense. So you essentially have two great passing teams against two average passing defenses. Then you have two amazing run defenses against two average run offenses. So this to me goes down to who's going to pass the ball better. I actually trust Joe Burrow more as a passing quarterback personally. The Bengals only have one loss at home as well. They got the home field in this game. And in a close game, which I think this is going to be a close game, I actually trust Joe Burrow more. Bills are 4-3 in games decided by 7 or less this season. Bengals 5-3. I know that's not a massive difference. Maybe
Mhm.
it's my gut feeling, but I've seen the Bills lose these close games in the playoffs. I saw the Bengals go into Kansas City and come back from behind in the AFC title game. I simply trust Cincinnati more in a close game. I think that Joe Burrow, to me, feels like more of the clutch quarterback than Josh Allen. So I'd actually like the Bengals to win a close game at home, and Bengals money line might be a good play. I don't feel confident enough to put it in the betting locks of the week, but if there was like a fourth or fifth bet out there, I think Bengals money line at plus money could be a good play.
Yeah, I think this one for me kind of comes down to, styles make the fight. And I think this is going to be a fantastic fight because we have two teams that are really high powered on offense in different ways. Because Buffalo has, of course, Josh Allen as a big component of the run game. Bengals are going to be leaning on Joe Mixon. And this is an advantage, I think, that the Bengals have over their counterparts atop the AFC, where you don't really have necessarily a straight up and down bell cow running back for Buffalo, nor do you have that in Kansas City. And not that necessarily Joe Mixon is the
Pacheco.
reason.
Pacheco is
He's
great
not really a
though.
bell. Like he's
He's
definitely talented,
he's
but he doesn't have
good.
the pedigree.
Oh, he's
Because
good.
like with Kansas City, they can go to Pacheco, they can go to McKinnon,
They're
but what
good
I'm saying,
though.
they're good. But what I'm saying is Joe Mixon's better than all of them. Okay, and what I'm saying is that's something that the Bengals can lean on heavily in their offense. I think what it like I'm going to go with the Bills in this one, and I think in
Okay.
small part at least is because Lyle Collins, as we have learned, the left tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals is out with a knee injury. And something that we've seen early in the season and kind of throughout the year going back to last year, Cincinnati does have trouble at times protecting Joe Burrow. And while the Buffalo Bills defense
No
getting
Von
passed
Miller.
on,
No Von
no
Miller
Von
though.
Miller, but they have a lot of depth along that defensive line, whether it's Oliver, whether it's I'm blanking on some of the other names, but like they have good depth at what they do for rushing the passer. So I could definitely see that being a factor in this game. So I'm going to go with Buffalo as a slight favorite on the road. And I also agree with you that they probably need this more because they've been losing in Kansas City in the playoffs. I think that's going to be significant. Whereas for Cincinnati, yeah, it'd be great if they could have the number one overall seed. But we saw what they did last year as a wild card team, going on the road and winning multiple games. I think that they are comfortable in that role. And if anything, bulletin board material, whatever you want to call it, Zach Taylor can absolutely coach them to that and say, hey, we've done this before. We have confidence in ourselves. We can go into Arrowhead. We can go into, I'm blanking on the name for the Buffalo Bills Stadium, but we can go into these harsh environments where the fans are absolutely rabid, where the conditions are going to be tough, and we can win these football games. So yeah, I'm going to give a slight advantage, to Buffalo to win this one. I think it also matters more to them that they get this as well.
A couple quick points there. So first off, I just remember this name Isaiah Pacheco because I don't necessarily buy your argument there because he is such a good running back. McKinnon's really good too, and actually Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be out of a spot because he's not as good as Pacheco. I think that's one of the best players in the NFL and a really unsung hero. So I don't actually buy that the Chiefs don't
Isaiah
have the
Pacheco
guy.
is one of the best players in the NFL.
Top 10 running back in the NFL. He just doesn't have the history, but I think he's a top 10 running back in the NFL. You look at the yards per carry, you look at just the way he plays the game. The guy is so good. He's just been part of like a split backfield. But I really like him. I've been so impressed by him. I mean, he literally took Clyde Edwards-Helaire's job even before Clyde got hurt again. He is that good. Let me look up the stats for you, Tom. Because, I mean, you know how much I love stats. But Pacheco, he's got himself 4.8 yards per carry this season. 4.8.
That's good for 16th in the league. I mean, granted, there's some quarterbacks up here, so okay, like top 10 in average per carry, but
He's
on
good.
how many attempts? Like, yeah, I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm saying Joe
He's good.
Mixon's better.
He's good at catching the ball. I mean, Mixon might be a little bit better, but I don't think that's. I mean, McKinnon's so good too. Like, I take the 2 from Kansas City versus the 1 on the Bengals. I mean, look at the Bengals. They're not in the top half in the league in rushing yards. I know part of that is the offense. But anyways, I digress. Just remember that name, Isaiah Pacheco. You'll be hearing that name 5-6 years down the road when he's got multiple Super Bowl rings and he's out there making Pro Bowls. Man has announced his name. He is here to stay. Other point, though, one of the key players in this game is going to be Gabe Davis. You never know what Gabe Davis you're going to get.
And that's
I know that personally because I have him on my fantasy team, and I'm playing you in the fantasy championship. We're in an 8-person league together. Tom versus Common in the fantasy championship. Projected to be pretty much a toss-up. It could go either way. So going to be a lot of fun. I think I've got the slight edge only because you might not have your 2 starting quarterbacks in a 2 QB league. That is Tua and Jalen Hurts. I've got Mahomes and Burrow. So I don't know if I'm going to start Gabe Davis, but my thought, Tom, also is that you look at the playmakers. I mean, a healthy Jamar Chase against the Stephon Diggs. We're talking about roughly even, right? I think it's fair to say because Jamar Chase is phenomenal. Roughly even if both guys are healthy. Not Mahomes, Burrow and Allen, roughly even as far as quarterbacks, at least passing the ball. But then I look at T. Higgins, and T. Higgins I can rely on T. Higgins a lot more than I can Gabe Davis. That's my thought there. I think Cincinnati has better depth on the offense. Joe Mixon, better than Devin Singletary. You look at Boyd, the number 3 receiver, he might be better than Buffalo's second option. So I think that Joe Burrow has more weapons to play with in a game like this. So give me the Bengals as far as who it's most important to. I know we talked about it briefly, but we look at the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals, the 3 best teams in the AFC. Bills are 6-1 at home. Chiefs are 6-1 at home. Bengals 5-1 at home. So obviously, all three teams with great fan bases, great environments, all could use the home field. And as you mentioned, one team gets a bye. Is that correct, Tom? Only one
Yep.
gets a bye in the playoffs. So that also helps because you get your guys rested. So that does help as well. Simply, like I said earlier, Buffalo's lost in Kansas City the last two playoff years. The Bengals went into Kansas City and won. So Buffalo needs the home field the most, I think, personally. But I think they're going to get the 3 seed in the AFC, and the Bills might be in trouble again. And Joe Burrow has that aura, that it factor. You get these Brady comparisons, and I 100% buy into them. I just maybe I'm selling Josh Allen short, but there was so much hype going in. And Tom, if you're just my gut feeling, game on the line, who's got that it factor? Who's going to make the clutch play? We've seen Mahomes and Burrow do it so many times. Not to say Allen hasn't done it, but he's also had more of these interceptions late in the game. More of these games like the Vikings, the team should have won. Josh Allen literally threw the game away. So if it's going to be a close game between these three teams, I actually trust, and he might be the third best quarterback, might be the second best quarterback in the NFL, Josh Allen, but I trust Mahomes more, and I trust also Joe Burrow more. And I know that, I mean, Allen had a pick against the Bears this week, and I was like, what is he doing? Like, Mahomes will get picks, but Mahomes gets them when he, like, forces the ball, and he gets enough good plays doing that. Josh Allen gets some of these interceptions where it's like, what did he see in that play? Like, he just throws it right to the other team. Mahomes does not do that. Mahomes is such a smart player. You almost never see Mahomes have an interception where it's a bad read. The only times he gets picks is when he actually just tries to zip it in there, and he gets it in there most of the time. So I just don't trust Josh Allen. I think it matters most for the Bills to get the home field, but I think that they lose this game. Kansas City gets home field. And we might not even see Bills and Chiefs potentially, because I think if the Bengals meet the Bills, Bengals are going to win again in the playoffs. I'm even worried as a Chief fan about the Bengals. They've got Kansas City's number. I mean, the Bengals have Kansas City's number right now. I'm going to pick the Chiefs if it comes down to the playoffs, but I am terrified of this Bengals team, and they remind me of Argentina's World Cup team. Joe Burrow's like Lionel Messi. He's the big star. You look at the Bengals defense, they don't have an enormous star on that team, but everyone, all 11 of those defensive players are absolutely fantastic. So that's just a scary team. Like Argentina, other than Messi, they don't have a second big star, but the rest of the 10 players are really good. A lot like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Bengals. We had this debate a few years ago in the Bucks-Chiefs Super Bowl. Chiefs had the better star power. Bucks had the better depth. Cincinnati Bengals have more depth, other than the offensive line position, which I'll give you that one. Other than the O-line, they've got the most depth when it comes to the receiver position and the defense, period. So give me the Bengals to take out the Bills and get that 2 seed in the AFC. Chiefs cruise the last 2 games, get the 1 seed. Mahomes takes home the MVP just the way it should be.
Well, moving into college football, as we are coming up on New Year's Eve, where we have the first round, the semifinals for the college football playoff. We'll start with the the reigning champion in college football, the Georgia Bulldogs. Impressive season yet again, 13-0 record, going up against Ohio State, a team that backdoored their way into the college football playoff, considering that they didn't even play in their conference championship game, but by virtue of losing one game all season to the eventual Big Ten champion Michigan Wolverines, they are in the 4th spot. Currently, Georgia is favored by about a touchdown in this game, so certainly some long odds for Ohio State. But the way I'm kind of looking at this comment as we get into this matchup a little bit is that if anybody has the passing firepower, it could be Ohio State, given that they have C.J. Stroud, who is going to be, the draft process will play out as it is, but he's certainly one of the top 2 to 3 quarterbacks being considered, certainly in the first round this year. A vast difference from what we saw last season, where only one quarterback taken in the first round. So the talent is absolutely there for C.J. Stroud. Do you see the Buckeyes having any chance whatsoever against this Georgia Bulldogs defense?
Not a zilch. They have some chance against the defense, but overall, none. And this is actually a huge game for CJ Stroud because if he plays great, he could be the number 2 overall pick. If he plays bad, he could potentially not be in the top 10. I know at one point it was a question mark, CJ Stroud or is it Bryce Young? But Bryce Young is pretty sure in that number 1 spot for the number 1 overall pick. CJ Stroud could be anywhere from 2 to 15. We've seen quarterback slides, etc. Look, he's a great player. I think Ohio State's offense could do okay. But I don't think Ohio State's defense is going to stop Georgia's offense, which is low-key very underrated. Stetson Bennett, legitimate Heisman candidate this season. I mean, look at Georgia, 492 yards a game this season, total yards. That's only one less than Ohio State at 493. So I know Ohio State averaged a little bit more points, but defensively is where there's a massive gap in defense here. Georgia allowing under 13 points a game. Ohio State about 19, but what did Ohio State do against Michigan, who put up 40 plus on them? That's my question mark with Ohio State. They really haven't beaten anyone good this year. Penn State, Notre Dame, they're only 2 top 25 wins this year, and Notre Dame was abysmal at the beginning of the season. They beat Notre Dame at their worst, so definitely a different, and they barely beat them at home too, by the way, in that game. What I've seen of Ohio State the last 2 seasons, the 2 times they played Michigan, they got annihilated. Kirby Smart at Georgia, the man is a coach. I like him better than Ryan Day. You have that time to prepare. Kirby Smart is going to have his guys prepared. Look, Georgia's about 6.5 point favorites, 7 depending on where you look. Georgia has beaten teams by more than 7 points every game but one against, guess who? Our Mizzou Tigers. But they dominated teams. They beat Oregon by 40 plus. They beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns. They beat LSU by 20 in the SEC championship game. They've just absolutely cruised against people. This team has, I know a lot of players gone from last year, but a lot of players back as well. They've got the experience. I just don't see how this is going to be a close game personally. I really don't. I could be wrong, but I think this is going to be a pretty comfortable win by Georgia. We've seen a lot of these national football semifinals be complete busts in recent years, as in not close at all. And I'm pretty sure neither of these games is going to be close, to be honest. I don't really give Ohio State a fighting chance in this game. They could prove me wrong. I've been wrong before. But to me, it just feels like this is sort of a coronation for Georgia. And it's kind of like, I got to be careful before I say this, because when people make these type of statements, Alabama comes right back strong. But I think it's a changing of the guard. I think Georgia's becoming the number 1 program in college football. And in the last 2 years, they've got 1 loss to Alabama, and then they came back and beat Alabama after that. So this is the best team in college football right now. This is the best program in college football. Ohio State's been really, really good in recent years, but when they've had the big games, they've lost to Michigan. In the playoff a few years ago, they lost to Clemson, I think it was. I do not trust Ohio State in these big games. I now trust Georgia, who used to be the big game choker. They've taken that next step. I think Georgia wins this game easily, maybe double digits, Tom, even.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the camp that Georgia's going to win this game fairly handily because, how has Ohio State lost the past couple of seasons? It's been, to Michigan, getting the ball run down their throat. And it has just not been, it's been a formula Ohio State hasn't really been able to crack at a major national level yet. It took, some incredible play with Justin Fields to get them into a title game a couple years back. And then it wasn't a really close game at that point, but if there's anything that kept them somewhat in it, it was the fact that they had an outstanding quarterback who could do it with his arm, who could do it with his legs. CJ Stroud.
Bear down, baby.
He's
more of a passer.
He's more of a passer than he is a runner. And you need kind of that dynamic level because if you're going to be a quarterback against this Georgia defense, you
Good
have
luck.
to be able to move off platform to make your throws. You're not going to be on time, on schedule throughout much of the game because Georgia is just absolutely stacked with defensive talent. They lost, what was it, five starters to the NFL draft last
They're
year, and
almost as
basically
good.
just replaced them with five more. Like that's the
Insane.
place where Georgia is at right now, as you're saying. So I think Georgia wins this one pretty handily. It would be a triumph if Ohio State can keep it within, two possessions or like a possession and a half, so to speak. If it's about a 10-point game, um, I mean, we could be. I mean, this is all purely hypothetical, looking a little far ahead. But we could be having a conversation about what is Ohio State's limit, believe it or not, at the national level. What
They're
is
the new
Ryan
Notre
Day's limit?
Dame. They're the new Notre Dame.
Possibly, possibly. And think about this. Think about for how many years Jim Harbaugh struggled to get Michigan over the hump against their rival Ohio State. And we have guys graduating off of this Ohio State team that have won one out of the last three times that they've played Michigan, or I think maybe one out of four. The pandemic kind of like throws off that number a little
No
bit.
kidding.
But all of a sudden that's kind of flipped a little bit. And Michigan certainly is not flashy the way Ohio State is, but that hasn't translated to the point that they are winning major title games in a consistent manner at a Alabama, or what we might now be seeing, what we probably will be seeing at
Mhm.
a Georgia level. And if anything, I know that we're going to be getting the expanded college football playoff. It's only going to get bigger. It's not going to get smaller. But we, as you said, we keep having these blowout matches in the semifinal round. And for the most part, each year, the two best teams typically end up meeting each other, which is what we had with the BCS championship to begin with. On
Oh, don't
occasion,
start this
sure.
one, Tom.
On occasion, sure,
Don't
there have
start.
been three, worthwhile teams. I know the year Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, that Clemson Ohio State game. You could argue that those two teams and Alabama deserve to be in that conversation, but it never really goes beyond four. So I don't know. These thoughts are bleeding into other larger college football thoughts that I've been having as the bowl games, from what I've been seeing, are talent wise, product wise, relatively poor this year. And there's myriad reasons behind that. Long way to a short point. I've got Georgia winning this one pretty handedly.
Yeah, a couple of real quick points. Yeah, so I did mention Ohio State losing to Clemson. They lost to Clemson once, then they beat them once. They did get
Mhm.
that one big national semifinal win. But it is interesting how there's sort of a changing of the guard. Ohio State, Alabama were the two premier franchises, the king of the SEC, the king of the Big Ten, which are going to be the two conferences now, with all these teams coming from the Pac 12, the Big 12, getting essentially dissolved into the SEC and Big Ten, which will be D2 power conferences.
Mhm.
Now, all of a sudden, it's Georgia and Michigan who are the faces of the SEC and Big Ten instead of Alabama and Ohio State. I will say we might be counting out Alabama a little bit too soon. And I think Ohio State has the potential to get back there. But the current roster, given what I've seen from them in the big games, definitely think Georgia should win pretty easily. As far as the next game, this is also an interesting one, Michigan and TCU. And I don't think this is going to be particularly close either. But real quickly,
Mhm.
Tom, to your point, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this could be a full 30-minute debate on its own. I do agree with what you're saying in terms of that we do end up having the best two teams, which we usually got with the BCS. It is still fun to talk about, and I think it's still exciting, even though so few of these semifinals have been good. I think it's still it's kind of cool to see what four teams get in, and it's kind of cool to see that sort of like dance like atmosphere. So I do like the playoff overall. I know it's
Mhm.
not necessarily perfect. I also buy what you're saying. But personally, I'm not looking to go back to the BCS. I'll say that on my side.
Yeah, that's
Michigan
never
or
going to happen.
yeah, Well, it's all about the money, though. We know that's the main reason
Mhm.
why it'll never happen. But Michigan or TCU, this might be an even bigger blowout, to be honest, than the other game. I mean, look, both teams average about 40 points a game. They're pretty close offensively. Defensively, Michigan allows about 13 a game, TCU about 25. Michigan allows, Tom, 277 yards a game. TCU 385. I mean, I don't think TCU is going to stop Michigan's offense. And while Michigan's not going to hold TCU to a shutout, they can contain TCU's offense. I know they got Duggan, the good quarterback, got a good running back, but Michigan can contain them. So, I mean, they held Ohio State to 23 points. If they hold Ohio State to 23, they should be able to hold Michigan to 20, maybe 17. And I think that should be plenty to win by double digits for Michigan. I like them to win. I like them to cover 7.5 points. It's one of those things for TCU where eventually things caught up to you. It reminds me of that Florida State team a few years back. Florida State was undefeated. They're defending national champs. Obviously, TCU was not a defending national champ, but Florida State got in the picture because of what they had done. But then you saw them, I think it was like the first playoff year, maybe, or one of the first ones. And then they just got clobbered. So TCU's had all these close wins, 5 wins by 8 or less, in what has been a pretty horrible Big 12 conference. If we're being honest, Tom, Oklahoma was 6-6 this season. Just saw Oklahoma State in the bowl game last night. They looked miserable against Wisconsin. Not a very good season. Baylor, I know not everyone plays in the bowl game, but Baylor looked horrible against Air Force. It's a very bad Big 12 conference. It's a good TCU team. I think it's great what they accomplished, but their luck started to run out. They lost in the Big 12 title game against Kansas State, and this is where I think it all kind of just falls off. Harbaugh kind of cements himself as a Michigan legend. I know he's hasn't won the big game yet. It does feel like he'll win it eventually, but Michigan keeps progressing. Last year it was we beat Ohio State, we got to the playoff. This year we beat Ohio State again, we got to the playoff, we won a game. So Michigan's getting dangerous. Keep this in mind. Georgia, Michigan, the only 2 undefeated teams. There's no way either of these teams lose against lesser competition. I could see Michigan winning here by 10, 17, could get as bad as 20. This should not be particularly close.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that simply because TCU has had a bunch of scares, as you mentioned, against not that great of teams. On the flip side, Michigan, looking at the Big Ten hasn't been especially strong this season. So it could be a little bit of fool's gold there. I think Blake Corum is out for the game. So this is one of the games where I think Michigan is going to win handedly. I think that if we were to put this in betting terms, there might be a backdoor cover type of situation with TCU where they make some late score that, might affect a certain households, but not necessarily the ultimate outcome of the game. To use a little bit of Al Michaels in there. Perhaps the house. Hopefully not, though. Yeah. So yeah, I've got Michigan as well. And then this kind of like bigger picture kind of opens the door or opens the conversation on where does Jim Harbaugh stand in the pantheon of, just like football coaches spanning multiple levels there. Because multiple NFC championship games, a Super Bowl appearance, of course, didn't get the ring in that matchup against his brother, but then coming back to Michigan, it's a rare feat to see a coach have success at both levels of the game. Pete Carroll, we've seen him have success in doing that, but you look at other coaches.
Saban didn't do great in the NFL.
Saban didn't do great
Spurrier,
in the NFL.
Not great.
Same thing. So this is one of those things where, we might be looking at low-key one of the better football coaches, one of the more versatile football coaches, if you want to put it in those types of terms. But yeah, I think we're going to be talking about next week a title game of Wolverines against Bulldogs. I think it's going to be a really fun matchup too, because these are two teams that are more predicated on the defense, are more well known for their defense, which I think is fun in college football, quite frankly. Because that way, it feels like there's almost a little bit more skill, a little bit more talent there. Because it feels like so many big plays are off of broken coverages or just bad defense at the collegiate level as they go to more of a spread system. Whereas NFL putting up points is a little more skillful, I think, than it is at the college level. But certainly going to be an exciting weekend with the New Year's Six. We're going to have these games as well. And of course, recapping and looking forward to the championship game come next week. But as we also mentioned, go ahead.
Yeah, one final point. Here's where I want Jim Harbaugh to be in about 1 to 2 years. head coach of the Chicago Bears. Come on now. He also
No,
was a
no faith
Bear.
in Eberflus?
No, I want Jim Harbaugh, man. Come on now. Bear fans are a little bit too excited right now. They have 3 wins. I know Justin Fields is exciting. They've got 3 wins. I know they've got a lot of injuries, but let's get a guy who played the position of quarterback, a guy that clearly knows how to coach quarterbacks. I think that's where I would like to see Harbaugh end up. Maybe get his fairy tale at his alma mater, Michigan, then get a fairy tale at his NFL team he played for with the Bears. That's where I want to see Harbaugh in a few years. I'm not sure if he's ever leaving Michigan, especially if he eventually wins the title. Someone's gonna have to drag him out of there because, just a couple of years ago, we're talking about him losing Ohio State. His job was kind of on the hot seat. I don't know if it was more fans and media talking, but we did have that discussion. He wasn't winning against Michigan State. He wasn't winning against Ohio State. And this is, to my point, I don't want to sound contradictory because this is where Matt Eberflus is going to get time as well. He deserves at least another year or two. But what does it take to develop a program? It takes time. It does not happen overnight. Even Nick Saban comes over to Alabama. Took him a few years before they were the very best team in football. So keep that in mind. But Harbaugh, for me, we're picking coaches in the world right now, football coaches in the world, regardless of level. I really have to think about it deeply, but off the top of my head, no question, top 10 football coach in the world, if not top 5, when you look at both levels, college and pro.
Absolutely. Well, it has come time for our year-end show. December 28th, we've got the new year that will be ringing in just a couple of days. So we'll start with, and I know exactly where you're going to go with this one.
Let's go.
No recency bias here at all.
None.
Comment what has been your team of the year, and then I'll touch on a couple that I think both legitimately can be considered team of the year, but also might be considered run-ups. But Campeones del Mundo, I think, is going to take the cake for you.
Argentina. Tom, hold on a second. Give me 10 seconds here. Hold on.
10 seconds.
Hold on.
9, 8.
Let's see what we got here.
7, 6, 5. I got to do something to fill time. As Common is off screen here, getting his Lionel Messi jersey or kit, rather, I should say, his kit. Or maybe actual Messi will be making an appearance. I don't know which way we're going to go.
Argentina.
Oh, the flag.
Argentina. Got to make sure you know, Tom. I should have had this up earlier. I wasn't prepared enough for this, apparently. So this is the Argentina scarf. So on the scarf, this is something I've owned before. There are 2 stars, right?
Yes.
You get a star for every World Cup you win. The updated scarf will have 3 stars, Tom Castleman.
Do you already have that on pre-order?
Not yet. I'm probably going to get a Messi jersey with 3 stars first.
Is it a jersey or is it a kit?
Could be called either.
Okay.
It's like it's a pitch and it's a field at the same time, depending on who you ask.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or it's 0-0 or 0-0, depending on who you ask. So yeah, team of the year. Let me say this. I have never, ever, ever, ever been happier at a sport result than Argentina winning the World Cup. It was truly one of the greatest moments of my life, regardless of what avenue we look at. I was ecstatic at Argentina winning the World Cup. But for the reason why they're the team of the year, think about this, Tom. It may not be to you, but what is by far the most popular sport in the world? By far.
It is football.
Football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. There are literally millions of people playing this sport. World Cup is once every 4 years. At the World Cup, all the best countries gather. You win the World Cup, you are the team of the year. Keep this in mind. Argentina had 36 straight matches without a loss heading into the World Cup. They lose the first game. And they bounced back to win 6 in a row. They blew 2-0 leads in the middle of that. Maybe that doesn't count as an all-time great team. I call that an all-time resilient team. Think about the composure to blow a 2-0 lead, essentially with a last-second goal against Netherlands, a goal with 10 minutes to go against France, and then you come back, you regroup, and you win in penalties. My heart was beating for about like toof, 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 toof for about 40 hours after the match. It was still, it would not stop. It was amazing. But the key about this Argentina team is that it's a team. My boy Messi, he's the GOAT. I'll talk about that throughout the show as you'll hear. But you've heard me say this many times, Tom. No one player wins a ring alone. I know the 2007 Cavalier LeBron James almost did it. The 2015 LeBron James almost did it. But it does not happen. And that's the difference between this Argentina team and teams of the past. Messi was still his, sparkling best, but his boys stepped up. And I look at the team chemistry they have, the love they have for each other, and I look at the fact that there are not mega stars on this team other than Messi. France had more stars. France should have won the World Cup, but Argentina's team came together. They helped out the GOAT. They won the World Cup. For me, no question, team of the year. Call me biased. Call me caught up in the moment. Call it recency bias. But what this team did was incredible. Think about this. Argentina had not won a World Cup since 1986. The pressure that Messi had, the pressure all these players had to deliver a World Cup title to Argentina, incredible. Think about the country, too. Not in the best financial situation. There were people selling their cars, selling their homes. There was people quitting their jobs, divorcing their wives, just to go to the World Cup, just to witness history. And it was worth it, Tom. It was worth it.
I don't know.
It was worth it. Celebrations crazy in Argentina, crazy in Bangladesh as well. Bangladesh loves some Messi, by the way. So Argentina is my team of the year. No question. Anything else? No, I'm not buying it.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say the Georgia Bulldogs. You could say our team of the year. If you want to count December 31st of 2021, that was the semifinal for last year's college football playoff, but one-handedly, the national championship last year, as you alluded to earlier in the program, only one game was as close as single digits.
Mizzou!
And they seem well poised to go ahead and win another title. So I agree. Argentina, you take away arguably, maybe not even arguably, the single biggest championship national award in the entire world that we have to offer.
Yes.
Argentina definitely takes the cake on that one. Had France come through on PKs, they would be team of the year. In my opinion,
that's probably fair.
I'm gonna shout out Georgia as well, just because of the dominance that they have had this season, and a little bit of last season as well, doing the calendar year route. Looking at other teams, I mean, maybe you could say Houston Astros, given that they were best team in the American League, go ahead and they win the World Series. You could say they're somewhat in the conversation, just to give a little bit of a shout out. Dusty Baker getting his first World Series ring, by the way. So if you want to talk storylines, that's there as well. So you have,
it's not the Warriors or Rams, though. Not the Warriors or Rams, defending champions struggling mightily.
No, absolutely not. No, those two teams I think are down for sure. But a good year as far as teams go, to have several really nice storylines threading through. Georgia overcoming, Alabama and rising to the level of national champion. Kirby Smart, their coach, kind of shedding that label of choking in big games, or rather not coming through. So yeah, I think Argentina as well, but definitely wanted to give a shout out to a couple of runner-ups, so to speak, as well.
Yeah, I think one final point. Yeah, one final point on that. I think it kind of speaks to where we are in the sports world right now, because we really don't truly have dominant teams anymore. I think a lot of it isn't so much that the best teams have gotten worse. I think the rest of the league is caught up across all of sports, because you have the Warriors, defending champs. They're playing like 500 ball. I know Curry's been hurt, but even when he was playing, they were playing like 500 ball. You've got the Bucks get off to this great start. Now they're losing as well. You have the Rams defending champions. A few injuries have hurt them, but you're a few injuries away from being a mediocre team. So even Argentina, as much as I love Argentina, if I'm being honest with you, Tom, this is not an all-time great World Cup team. I think
Mhm.
the 2014 Germany team, the 2002 Brazil, the 2010 Spain, I mean, maybe even France of the last World Cup. This is probably of the last 6 or 7 World Cup champions. If we're looking at pure dominance, this is maybe like the fourth middle of the pack as far as dominant World Cup team. But I think it's just because sports are so tight. They lost to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia did not win either of their last 2 World Cup games. They were technically one of the worst teams at the World Cup if you look at FIFA ranking. If one of the worst teams can beat the World Cup champion, that shows you how crazy parity in sports is. I mean, it also shows you
Mhm.
that they did get lucky. I mean, Argentina had more chances. In soccer, there is luck involved. You know, Saudi Arabia had 2 shots, 2 on goal. They both went in. That's how it happens sometimes, but it shows you just how tight sports are right now. If we're looking at most dominant team, I agree with you. It's Georgia Bulldogs.
Mhm.
But if you're looking at the overall accomplishment and just what it means, I think Argentina is it. But I do think that the dynasty era is kind of gone in sports. I mean, I'm hopeful as a Chief fan, Mahomes can get there. That's the one guy that can do it because of his greatness. But I don't think we're ever going to see, I don't want to say ever, but at least in our lifetime, I don't think we'll see three peats. We might see like the Chiefs might win 2 out of 3. They might win maybe like 3 out of 6. But
Mhm.
I don't know if we're gonna. Like, it's just so wide open right now that a team to win 2, 3 titles in a row, and what Georgia's doing right now, they're about to win 2 in a row. So I think they're the most dominant team in sports right now. But Argentina, obviously, for me, I think it's got to be team of the year for what it meant to the country and the world.
Absolutely. So now we're moving on to who is the athlete of the year, and of course, there is any number of criterion that you could put into this category. I know, Common, you're going to go with Lionel Messi. Although, if Kylian Mbappe won the best individual player, doesn't that kind of negate Messi as
He
being
did
the
win best
best player
individual
of the year?
player.
Who
Messi
did?
won the Golden Ball for best player at the
Oh, I thought it
tournament.
was Kylian Mbappe. Okay. Anyway,
Mbappe got the golden boot. Mbappe had 8 goals and 2 assists. Messi had 7 goals and 3 assists.
gotcha.
But Messi got the golden ball. Mbappe got the golden boot for most goals scored. However, they did
Okay.
have player ratings at the World Cup where they take multiple things into account. And Messi was rated top player of the World Cup. And Mbappe was rated second best player. So
Okay.
Messi
I
was
thought the Golden Boot
technically
was the award for best
no,
player.
Golden Boot is the award for most goals. It's like getting
Gotcha.
the scoring championship in the NBA, but not the MVP. Messi essentially got the MVP.
Gotcha. Well, certainly Lionel Messi could be in that conversation. I'm sure you will wax poetic about him and any number of
Yes.
your other favorite athletes. I'll get the ball rolling with three that have kind of come across my mind. One for me that you could throw out there is Nikola Jokic. He won his second consecutive MVP last year. He's playing even better this
It's
year
insane.
than he has been the past
Insane.
couple of years. So you could certainly say, he's got the Nuggets number one overall in the Western Conference. So he absolutely could be out there. Katie Ledecky, a swimmer for the United
Unbelievable.
States, just came out as the second time that she's won the AP Female Athlete of the Year.
So
You can
dominant.
look at any of her competitions. She usually just blows everybody out. I think she set a couple more world records this year in a couple different events. Second time she's winning the AP Female Athlete of the Year. So she has to be in that conversation as well. And then another Olympian, Nathan Chen. Um, I know it's a while
Dominant.
back, going all the way to January, February, but set
Dominant.
the Olympic record for short program score, landed 5 quads in his long program.
Incredible.
So these are all multiple athletes that we could say is athlete of the year. It feels almost wrong to me to pick just one,
Sure.
especially in a year where we have a World Cup, where we have a Winter Olympics. It's not like we're talking about just like the core 3 or 4 American sports. We're talking at a global scale here. And even then, I'm talking about, solely American athletes. Lionel Messi, of course, is one. And then if you want to go a little bit more wistful, you could say, perhaps Roger Federer, maybe not necessarily success on the court, but certainly as he rides off into the sunset, Serena Williams as well. There are any number of
My
athletes that
boys.
can claim 2022 as being a significant chapter, significant story in their careers, in their lives.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, like we talk about how there's a lot of parity when it comes to teams. I think there's a lot of parity when it comes to athletes. I think
Hmm.
there's so many good ones. I mean, Messi, I think, is the best player in the world right now in soccer. He is statistically rated the best player in League One, two, ahead of Mbappe, also ahead of him in the Champions League. But if I take the unbiased part of me, I mean, Mbappe is really good. De Bruyne is good. Neymar's good. There are players that are not necessarily so far away from Messi now. I will say Messi is still the best, but he's not who he was 5 years ago. He was a better player 5 years ago than he is now because he was simply younger. But I mean, you look at these other sports. I mean, even Ledecky. Like, I love Katie Ledecky. She's so humble. But Tom, actually, at the last Summer Olympics, I know it's not this year, but there was an Australian
Hmm.
swimmer that beat her a couple times.
Sure.
So she's actually not as dominant now as she was, say, 8 years ago. And it's not even that her times have gotten worse. There's so many people just pushing to be the best. It is nonstop. And Nikola Jokic, right now, if I had to pick one guy, he might be the MVP. And he's almost averaging a triple double, not a Russell Westbrook triple double. He's shooting efficiently from the field. He's not turning the ball over. He's almost averaging a legitimate triple double. With that said, we had Luka Doncic last night. You see what he did? 60
Yeah,
points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists. The first 60-20-10 game in NBA history. Are you kidding me? Luka is just, Giannis is still really good. I mean, it's hard to pick just one guy in all of these leagues. There's so many good ones. If we're actually talking about sheerly the most dominant, it's got to be Nathan Chen. The guy just completely blew the scores out of the water. If we're talking about
hmm
most dominant athlete in the world right now, it's got to be Nathan Chen. But I'm talking athlete of the year. I'm going to make the same argument I made earlier. What sport is played by the most people in the world? Football or soccer? He's 35 years old, Tom. He just went out there, balled out at the World Cup. Him and Mbappe tied for most total goal contributions, but Messi had the most chances created. I think he was tied for the most assists. I think he was second in dribbles. I mean, he was the player of the tournament, biggest stage, 35-year-old, wins his first World Cup. He's won everything now. He's won, the most Ballon d'Ors for best player, the most golden boots for most goals. He's won, 4 Champions Leagues. He's about to pass up Dani Alves for most total team trophies, most total goals and assists. He's actually won the Copa America, the Olympics, and the U20 World Cup with Argentina. The only thing missing was the World Cup trophy. And while I do give a lot of credit to his teammates, who was instrumental in all the goals? I mean, look at their goals in the knockout stage against Australia. They win 2-1. Messi gets a goal. Then they
hmm
play Netherlands 2-2. He gets a goal and an assist, and then he makes his penalty in the shootout. Against Croatia, gets a goal and an assist. They scored 3 goals. In the final, gets 2 goals against France. He was instrumental the whole way. He's the first player in the history of the World Cup, Tom, to score in all 5 knockout rounds. Round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, World Cup final. In the history of this sport, no one has ever achieved that. World
hmm
Cup's been around since 1930. Think about that accomplishment. That is the epitome of clutch. Messi came up clutch. He's my athlete of the year, but there is a lot of really good ones that are deserving. If we're going strictly most dominant, I might go Nathan Chen. But you look at the pressure the man's got on him. Lionel Messi, no question for me, athlete of the year. I like the Federer
Absolutely.
shout out though too. Though I'm very sad he's retired, but I love Federer as well. Mahomes, I
hmm
think, is always in that discussion. What Mahomes is doing this year, it's like Mahomes, Messi, LeBron are those guys that are so good for so long. We take them for granted. Even LeBron right now. We're talking about best players in the league. He doesn't get mentioned because the Lakers are bad, but that dude can ball too. So the NBA, by the way, my goodness, how many good players are in the league right now? it's just dumbfounding.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to a couple of our highlights and lowlights, this isn't something that we necessarily had planned out, but just like a little happy trails of the year as we are saying goodbye to Serena Williams as she announced her retirement. Roger Federer, another
Mhm.
all-time great, announcing his retirement. JJ Watt uh, just came out the other day and said that this season is going to be his last. And then, of course, very sad, goodbye to Bill Russell, an all-time great and icon on multiple fronts who passed away this year. I'm sure there are several other athletes who are retiring, who have passed, but definitely wanted to recap certainly some of the biggest names that we've seen that are not going to be picking up a racket, a helmet, a basketball ever again. Comment if there's anybody else that kind of pops to mind as kind of somebody who's saying sayonara
Well,
on their
Franco Harris
professional
just
careers.
passed away last week or earlier this
Franco
week. I
Harris.
think it was last week he passed away. So RIP to
Yeah.
Franco Harris, an absolute legend. You know, I
Mhm.
have a podcast selling sports memorabilia, sportscaster online show. And Franco Harris has one of the best autographs out there. So RIP to Franco Harris as well, off the top of my head.
All right. Let's go to best and worst picks of the year for us.
Ugh, where do you want to
Um,
start? Best
I
or
mean,
worst?
it's easier for me to start with worst because I had a couple that saved in my notes. Because
Okay.
I've been tracking, hey, who are our division winners for the NFL? I got rid of the ones I
Mm,
had for baseball, unfortunately. But I'll start with a little bit of self deprecation. As I said, hey, Belgium to win the World Cup
Ooh,
doesn't get out of the round of 32. I said, hey,
that
the
was bad.
Indianapolis Colts to win the AFC South. In my defense, no one in the AFC South currently has a winning record. The Colts, however, are
That
out
might
of
make it
playoff
worse,
contention.
Tom. That might make it worse.
But for me, I think the biggest worst pick that I have has to be the Rams going to the Super Bowl. Uh, and basically, this is something that we've run to multiple times on this show. When it was, hey, let's all pick the Chiefs over the Buccaneers, ignoring what we were seeing in terms of better depth, better defense, etc. For a few skilled players, we saw the Rams decline in the Super Bowl last year. We saw what it would look like where Cincinnati seemed to be up and in control for much of that game. It took a Herculean effort from Cooper Cup
Cooper
and
Cup.
Aaron Donald to seal a win. And I even said at the beginning of the season, that's not really sustainable over 17 games. I just thought other people on that team would be stepping up more as they brought in Bobby Wagner to play linebacker. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey is a good cornerback. Allen Robinson, I thought was going to be a better
Over the
player than
hill.
he is, and of course Matthew Stafford
Injured.
has been in significant physical decline, just as far as health goes. But even before then, he wasn't necessarily playing all that well. Although that could also be injury related because there was some talk about an elbow issue with him in training camp as well. So in light of all that stuff, hindsight's 2020, but also some foresight could have been very close to 2020 as well. I just chose
Sure.
not to see it. So I have to say Rams in the Super Bowl is probably my worst call of the year.
Yeah, it almost kind of feels like it's one of those things where, um, they traded all their draft picks to get to a Super Bowl title. Matthew Stafford, I mean, that'll be a great debate whether he makes the Hall of Fame or not. But the thing missing was the championship.
Mhm.
Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive players of all time, to get his legacy as a top 5 defender ever, winning the Super Bowl. It seemed like they gave it everything they had. I mean, they got Odell Beckham in the middle of the season. Actually, I know he got hurt in that game, but if he doesn't get that touchdown early on, they might not win the Super Bowl. It seems like they pulled out all the stops, Von Miller as well, to get that Super Bowl title. And then kind of like the gas fell off afterwards. But it was worth
Mhm.
it for all those guys, to be
Flags
honest.
fly forever. Flags
A
fly forever.
100% worth it. So, I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, I had the Rams winning the division. That's got to be a bad pick. I had the Broncos as a wild card.
Mhm.
That has not worked out well. The Bucks, I did pick to make the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. I know they can do it, but it looks really bad right now. It looks really bad. I'll be honest. It looks
Mhm.
really bad for the Bucks. So those are some of the sort of preseason picks that have not worked out well. I mean, I think we both, uh, missed the ball on some of these. I
Mhm.
think all these upsets and these great teams that are struggling. I mean, I think I might have had the Raiders in the playoffs. I can't remember, but they've been bad certainly. The Broncos have been bad. So those are some of the bad picks. I mean, one that stands out to me from a sheer betting line perspective that I had written down here, and I think you might have made the same pick. So this might be both of
Mm.
us missing this
Okay.
one. I know I made it. I don't know if you ended up putting it on the show, but I feel like maybe you did make the same pick. I could be wrong.
Mm.
But I had the Vikings to beat the Cowboys. They went on to lose 40-3.
Yeah,
So
I picked that in the segment. I did not lock that in though, I
right,
don't
but I
think.
locked it in as
Yeah.
well. So that was definitely one that went pretty bad. Pretty
Yeah.
bad.
As far as best picks go, I don't really track like locks of the week or anything all that closely, so I don't necessarily have one. But one conversation as I was looking at Jokic's MVP odds this year, can you tell me, Common, who is the front runner currently for NBA MVP? If
Jokic.
you know,
Jokic.
the betting favorite is
Luca.
Jason Tatum, who
Really?
I said last year heading into
Mm,
the NBA Finals was ascending to the status of top 5 talent in the NBA, and as a
okay.
current leading candidate for MVP as of right now, he's in that conversation. I know the
Yeah.
NBA has so much talent, so much depth. You could name 20 guys who are top 5 guys in the league. Jokic, Luka, LeBron, Giannis, Durant, Jason Tatum. Who else do we have here? Ja Morant is fantastic. You can go with any number of players, but I'm going to say my best call of the year is that Jason Tatum, as he's putting up more efficient numbers, he's shooting a couple percentage points more efficiently, still grabbing rebounds, and of course contributes significantly as a two-way player, as he's pretty good on defense as well.
Sure.
I'm going to say that might be my best call, is that Jason Tatum still had more ceiling that he could reach at this point. Um, that's probably the best one that I have. I may have made an additional prescient pick or two. I mean, I think I said, was it week 2 that the Jets getting that overtime win over the Browns is a culture changer for them? They've kind of fizzled and waffled a little bit as they've
Yeah.
struggled with quarterback, but certainly the Jets don't feel like the Jets anymore. So I guess I could put that as like an honorable mention, second up for me, saying that maybe that's
Sure.
a little bit different for them, but I don't know. I don't have any crazy long shot calls like saying TCU's going to the college football playoff or anything that I can really hang
Sure.
my hat on as a bold out there prediction.
Yeah, I mean, as usual, it goes up and down. You win some, you lose some.
Absolutely.
So a couple of things I've written down. I mean, obviously, they were technically the second betting favorite, but it was like basically tied between Argentina and France. I know it was a little bit of a
Mhm.
biased pick, but calling Argentina to win the World Cup, field of
Sure.
32 teams, I would say that's a pretty good prediction. Definitely one I'm very happy on. Definitely one I cashed in on when it comes to DraftKings. Tom, I got the whole family involved. Give 100, get 100. We
Mhm.
all put $100 on Argentina to win the World Cup. My mom, my dad, and I, and we all won. So we'll be
There you
going to an
go.
Argentinian restaurant to celebrate. The family got some extra money thanks to Argentina. So that's a
Nice.
good pick, both financially and both for me, pride wise. This one I'll go back to early in the year. I don't know if you remember me specifically putting this out there, but I think this is a pretty good pick because I picked the Rams to win the Super Bowl, but the Bengals to cover the line. And that did
Mhm.
happen. Rams won the Super Bowl, Bengals covered the line. So kind of hard to get both of those things happen at once. So that was definitely a very strong prediction on my part. Um, I think trying to think who we picked. I don't know who we picked in that one. I don't remember if we talked about this on this show or not. That's why I feel like we didn't. But and I certainly didn't think they'd be as good as this. But I know that on my work podcast, I set bet your money on Seattle over 5.5 or 6.5 wins, whatever the over under is. I think I mentioned it on this show, Tom, too.
Yeah.
Seattle Seahawks, total
You
win.
mentioned them being better, yeah, than a lot
Yeah.
of people thought,
Well,
myself
because
included.
the Seahawks, Tom, had Their worst season in a long time last year, where they got 7 wins, and I want to say their
Mhm.
over under was 5.5. And I was like, do people really think they're going to be a 5-win team? Now, speaking of teams that have faded, they faded themselves as well. But given that they're 7-8, I think right now, that's a lot better than anyone would have had them at this point. So on Seattle Seahawks doing well, I think has been a good prediction. I think for your part, you mentioned them as a long shot MVP. I know it's not going to happen, but Kirk Cousins playing pretty good this year.
Oh yeah,
So that's a
halfway
good
decent.
one. That's a good one on your part. Um, Trying to think other ones. I just had those few written down. I know we made some other good picks. I mean, I obviously I
Mm.
feel good about my preseason pick of the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. That could happen. And I think I still feel good about the Bucks as my preseason NBA pick. Or did I pick the Warriors? Now I can't remember. Warriors is the bad one because I was on board on the Warriors having a good bounce back season. Still
Mhm.
early though. Still early. We'll see what happens, but it's definitely been a year of ups and downs. But it's always fun making predictions. You win some, you lose some. Always fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, with the NBA, I don't have yours written down, but I do have my NBA Finals prediction of Celtics over Nuggets looking kind of good right now. But we've got a
Not
lot of season to
bad.
go,
Not
so that'll
bad.
be one that that might be referenced in next year's show. So that's going to wrap it for our year-end recap. It has been a wild, fantastic year. There are any number of places you can go to read about more in-depth things. There's so many things we didn't touch on. We've got the Live Golf tournament or league starting up as a significant story. Of course, something we haven't really talked about much on the show because it's a really deep, meaty, complicated issue. But Brittany Griner, she is
Mhm.
now home. She is back stateside after a crazy year that she has had after being arrested and sent to a penal colony in Russia for having some cannabis oil. Any number of places you can go. Wasn't this the year that there was a player who collapsed on the pitch? His heart stopped,
That was
and
last year.
that was last year. But he came back and played this year. I think
He's
it
made
was
a
like the
pretty good
conclusion.
comeback.
Like
Harrison has made a
that
good
was the
comeback. Yeah.
conclusion onto that arc as well. So there are
Yeah.
any number of year end recaps where you can go and get some really really great sports content. This is just a small window that we can provide into that on our end, but
Sure.
certainly a great year in 2022, and of course we're going to be kicking off a great year in 2023 as well, as we mentioned with Chicago college football playoffs. NFL playoffs are coming up as well. Speaking also now of different picks that we've made, this has been a rough segment for us this
Rough
year.
start. New year, new start. Let's have
Well,
confidence,
it's
Tom.
yeah. Let's see. I'll let you go through the recap comment, but in short, no bueno.
So betting locks of the week. I think we last had a show a few weeks ago, so this speaks to how long ago it's been. Uh,
Hmm.
Also, keep this in mind. Talking about barbecueage, I had Argentina plus 120 to beat Netherlands in regulation. They're up 2-0. They give up 2 goals, including a last second goal in the 110th minute of stoppage time. Maybe they should have even been playing the game at that point. Or 100th minute, whatever it was. So missed that one. Argentina did win in penalties, thank goodness. Did not have a heart attack, but I was getting close to it. I did get Messi to score against Netherlands at plus 160, so got that one right. And I had Brazil, Croatia over 2.5 goals. Was 0-0 in regulation, 1-1 after extra time, going to penalties, missed that one. You had the Vikings plus 2.5 against the Lions. Lions winning 34-23. Ravens plus 2.5 against the Steelers. They did win 16-14. You got that one. And this one went very wrong. Bucks plus 3.5 at the Niners. Niners winning 35-7. So what you got for us? The last betting locks of this year.
For the last betting locks of this year, I have some college football as we are getting into
Same.
some really, really fun stuff. So I'm going to start with an over under. I'm going to take USC and Tulane over 62.5 points total in the game. Both offenses are decent to good, and USC's defense in particular is not very strong. I think we're going to see points galore in this one. It's a high number, but I think we're going to hit it. in an exhibition matchup. I am liking the Kentucky Wildcats over the Iowa Hawkeyes simply because I don't really know how Iowa's putting up points. Kentucky, not necessarily a great team, but they have a really talented quarterback in Will Levis who needs to
Underachieving
show
one.
out. He's underachieving
Underachieving
for
one.
sure, but he needs to show out in order to
Get that money. High draft pick. Get that money.
you know what? I'm
Uh-oh.
maxing that one.
Oh, no.
I'm
Don't go
maxing
away with the
Kentucky.
gut.
I'm going to switch over to the Utah Utes
Oh, gosh.
over Penn State, 2.5. Utah is favored in that one. And then Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr. are going to be playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Give me Alabama -6.5 under that key 7-point number on the spread. So these are what I'm locking in. Alabama -6.5 over K-State. USC and Tulane over 62.5 points. And then I'll wrap it up with the Utah Utes -2.5 on the spread against Penn State.
Yeah, so real quick, Utah is the USC killer. USC would be in the playoff if not for 2 losses against Utah. Secondly, it's kind of funny how I don't want to get in this whole debate, but obviously we talk about the playoff, who's in, who's not. Alabama 6.5-point favorite against Kansas State. TCU just lost to Kansas State. So it shows you that if TCU and Alabama played right now, everyone would bet on Alabama. One note about that, those 2 guys I have heard are playing, it'll be interesting to see if they play the whole game because that could be a potential backdoor cover for Kansas State. But in theory, I think Alabama should cover that line. It's been a very different Alabama team in bowl games. Some games they've come out inspired, others they haven't. My gut feeling, though, is that those 2 guys want to get that draft stock, maybe be the 1-2 pick. I think they'll not only play, they'll play great in that game. My betting locks of the week, I know we talked about this a lot earlier, and I was so confident. So I've talked myself into picking the national semifinals. So you could probably know where I'm going. Michigan -7.5 over TCU. Michigan allows about 12 points a game. TCU about 25. TCU's got a lot of close wins, 5 wins by 8 or less. Their luck runs out in this game. Michigan won at Ohio State by 22. They won by 24 against Penn State. Wolverines are 13-0 this year. 11 of those 13 wins by double digits. So the math tells you Michigan should win by double digits. So -7.5, I feel great about it. Harbaugh's going to have them ready. All Wolverines in the national semifinal. Other national semifinal, Georgia -6.5 over Ohio State. Buckeyes coming off a 23-point home loss against Michigan. They've only got 2 top 25 wins this year against what was at the time a bad Notre Dame team and a good win against Penn State. But the same question I have about Ohio State, who have they played? Who have they beat? Who has Penn State played? Who have they beat? No one good because they lost to the 2 good teams they played this year. Just feels like a down year for the Big Ten. I know it's ironic that I'm picking Michigan, but they are just that good of a team. Georgia only lost once in the last 2 years against Bama. They're blowing teams out like crazy. Only won 1-score game all season. 4-point win against Mizzou. I still don't know how that happened, Tom. But other than that Mizzou aberration, they've won every game by 7 or more. They beat LSU by 20. They beat Oregon, I think, by 46. Tennessee by 14. Really should win by 7. No problem. Kirby Smart going to lead his boys to a big-time win. And then lastly, I have the Bucks -4.5 at the Bulls tonight. The Bucks have won 16 of the last 18 meetings against the Bulls. And guess what? They lost the last one by 5. I don't see the Bulls winning this game. Bucks actually have lost a few in a row, but I think it's a good bounce back spot for them. Bucks should win by 5 or more against Chicago. No problem. Chicago has no answer for Giannis. They've never had an answer for him. They will not have an answer for him tonight. That's true. Good point. So those are my locks. I'm feeling a 3-0 week, Tom. I'm feeling good. Feeling good.
Absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. We'll be having that success this upcoming week. Moving into sports trivia, I must admit I did not find anything. I didn't look anything up. So, what do you have for us this week, Common?
All right, Tom. 4 quarterbacks in NFL history have 4 seasons or more. One of them is 5 with 4,500 pass yards and 35 touchdowns. In the same season, they've done it 4 times. Can you
Mhm.
name the 4 quarterbacks? It's not that hard of a question. I'll preface that, but I just saw the stat. I thought it was cool.
Mhm.
I figured usually our trivia questions are harder, but I figured this would be a good one to put in there.
Yeah, so I mean, like the usual obvious suspects for me, Tom Brady is one.
5 times in 21 seasons. That's the most.
Peyton Manning would be my second guess.
4 times for Manning in 17 years.
Patrick Mahomes has to be on that list from that MVP season he had.
4 times in 5 years for Mahomes. Think about that. He's done that
Wow.
4 out of his 5 seasons, and Brady did it 5 in 21 years.
Yeah,
And
sign of the times. There's
yeah,
one more.
sign of the times, but none of these other guys in this era are doing it in Mahomes' era.
True. Um, Prolific passer, 4,500 passing yards, 35 touchdowns. I'm gonna go old school, say Dan Marino. He's kind of like the first guy to do a lot of this stuff. Is it Marino?
Not Dan Marino.
Hmm. Let's
Don't
see.
overthink it. It's a big name.
Big name. Don't overthink it. Would it be Drew Brees?
Drew Brees.
Okay.
So I thought it was a pretty easy question, but I thought it was a pretty cool stat. I mean, Brees, Brady
Yeah.
5 times, Manning, Mahomes 4. I know it's a different era, but with that said, man, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, they haven't done this, 4 times. No one else has done it 4 times in this era. So speaks to just how dominant Mahomes is at the moment.
Absolutely. So that brings us now to statement of the week. Tom, do you want to start off or do you want to go with what I have first?
Now you can go first. I think my way is a good way to end the show.
All right. So for me, my statement of the week is that NFL teams are going to be learning real fast that they should not be basing their quarterback mega contracts on Tom Brady, the greatest player of all time, greatest quarterback of all time. Tom Brady, he is just broken how NFL front offices are assessing quarterbacks. Why do I say that? At the age of 45, Tom Brady has continued to play at a high level. Granted, this year he's dropped off. But first off, that's just a ridiculous thing to say that at the age of 45, this is the first year of drop off that he has had.
Sure.
And he's had such a sustained a period of success throughout the league. I'm going to run off a
You're
couple of
targeting
different
Russell
names.
Wilson here.
I'm targeting Russell Wilson. I'm targeting Matt Ryan. I'm targeting, to a slightly lesser extent, Aaron Rodgers. At the age of 39, certainly he's won a couple of MVP awards the past couple seasons. But this year, let me pull up his Pro
Not good.
Football Reference page. He is tied for throwing the second most interceptions in a single season in his career.
Which he's usually the best at not throwing picks, by the way.
He's usually the best at limiting those mistakes. But even outside of just the raw numbers, you can look at how he's playing and say, hey, there's decline here. You look at Matthew Stafford. He's only in his mid-30s. Russell Wilson, another quarterback who's 33, 34. And then even if you go to a couple of recently retired greats, Philip Rivers, retired at the age of 39, wasn't particularly great those last couple of seasons. Same thing for Ben Roethlisberger. You can even look at Peyton
wasn't
Manning.
Good in his last year.
He
Even though he won the Super Bowl.
Last year, retired at the age of 39. Drew Brees might be the slight anomaly because he wasn't great, but he was still a decent enough quarterback up to the point that he retired at the age of 41, 42, something like that.
We're talking about, again, though, like behind Tom Brady, we're talking about a top 5 player of all time. So, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying, whenever you have an anomaly, we're talking about the greatest ever to do it. So most guys don't do it at that level. I agree with you. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah, like Drew Brees is the most. He's like the best player on this list as far as when he retired, was he actually a decent quarterback? And I would argue pretty decent, but certainly limited. This is something that teams are going to have to find out and are going to have to kind of redo the calculus because the NFL is a copycat league. What do we see teams doing once the LA Rams win the Super Bowl? We see the Broncos go out and get Russell Wilson. We see teams moving in for a win now quarterback. It's something that the Indianapolis Colts have been doing for years, trying to find just that one guy that can fit in and lead you to the promised land.
The Manning curse that I put on him.
And what comes with that is also, a significant financial commitment to trying to find your franchise quarterback. And this is something that teams are going to have to adjust on a little bit. The window is no longer, hey, if you draft a guy and he's 22, 23, 24 type of thing, that he's going to be a 15 to 20 year starter franchise player for you. That window's probably closer to 10 because prior to Tom Brady, that's when we started to see decline in other players. That's when we started to see Brett Favre certainly played well late into his career, but there was a clear drop off
Well,
as that went on.
Manning was weird though, because at 35, Manning I think had the greatest season ever or something like that. And then he declined all of a sudden. I mean, even Rodgers was an MVP, declined all of a sudden. So
yeah. So this is something where the actuaries, for NFL contracts are going to have to sit down and say, okay, with these different contracts that we are committing to guys, how far into the future are we willing to go? It's going to take a rare breed. It's going to take a Tom Brady, a Patrick Mahomes. We're certainly going to see how that contract ages out, as it was a significant deal. It was like 10, 15 years, something like it was a ridiculously long contract.
For Mahomes?
Yeah, for Mahomes. And so it's going to be interesting
because he's
to
still
see.
so young. I think it's 10 years on Mahomes.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see, okay, when he's coming up at the end of that, toward that age 33, 34 season, where the NFL is going to be in assessing quarterbacks and saying, okay, how much do we want to gamble on greatness being great to the Tom Brady peak, which is truly the outlier in this case when so many their peaks are declining around the mid 30s and they can still be serviceable to late 30s. But usually there's that steep drop off, especially in a game as physical in football, especially in a league that now has 17 games, and we might be seeing going to 18 games, which means more hits, more wear and tear on athletes. So it's going to be fascinating to see where that goes. This is absolutely aimed at Russell Wilson, who has, I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know if there is a bounce back. It certainly seems like former players that are commentators on various sport networks are saying, yeah, instead of let Russ cook, it's Russ is cooked. I mean, when you have Patrick Starr from SpongeBob roasting you on the Nickelodeon version broadcast of the game, that's pretty much the end of it for you. So it'll be interesting to see, if Russell Wilson now kind of is that major cautionary tales and what that's going to do for the quarterback position, at least from a team building perspective going forward.
More or less, I agree with you. I kind of see where you're going with that. I do want to say this, Tom, though. I think what you're saying makes sense in terms of, are you going to commit to a 33, 34-year-old, then give him the deal? With that said, in Mahomes' case, when you have a guy who's like 25, you commit 10 years. Even if you get 7 prime years, it is 100% worth it. So,
no, I'm saying for Mahomes, I'm saying the next one after that, after this deal,
that's fair.
Whether it's an extension or just a brand new clean contract, that's where I'm going to be curious to see.
Yeah.
The deal that they did for him now, 1,000%, I believe, was the absolute right thing to do, and they're getting everything. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. But it's I'm more interested to see years down the line what ends up happening, because basically that conversation of greatest of all time is between those two guys right now, with Tom Brady, I think, being clearly enough ahead of, say, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, because like those guys can't really surpass him, I don't think, in that conversation. Is really going to be too. And Drew Brees, exactly. Yeah. But those guys, 2 out of 3 guys are done playing, so they can't really do anything to surpass Tom Brady in that regard. So really, it is looking at Patrick Mahomes and saying, all right, this is the Kylian Mbappe to the Messi type of conversation. If I can make a cross-sport comparison.
Do not compare. It's not as good there. Mbappe is not on this, I don't want to get into it, but Mbappe is not like, I don't know, maybe it's my bias, but Mahomes is more talented than Brady. Mbappe is not more talented than Messi. Messi but at that age was better.
Parallel of,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to
Kylian Mbappe is the next best thing, right?
Yeah.
He's the next best player after Messi in soccer.
Maybe he's definitely a young guy. It's
right, because he's only
depends
23.
Depends on what you want.
I contend my analogy is strong enough. What's your statement of the week?
Well, it'll be about the soccer team. I want to real quickly address what you're saying, though, Tom. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. Like, if it's a 33, 34, 35-year-old, don't commit. But if it's a 25-year-old to a 10-year deal, even a 15-year deal, if you can get 10 good years, it might be worth it. But obviously, I kind of get where you're headed at. It's hard to know when the drop off is going to come because Manning and Rodgers went from being a top 1 or 2 quarterback in the league, literally 1 year later being like a bottom half quarterback in the league. So very dramatic. And we're kind of seeing that with Brady this season. I mean, he
Mhm.
was a top 2 or 3 quarterback last year. So you just never know when the drop off is going to happen. My statement of the week, it's the last moments of Salute Your Sports for the year. So I know we skipped some shows. You didn't have to put
Mhm.
up with me talking too
Yeah.
much about the World Cup. Don't worry. I won't make too many references in 2023, but Tom, you have a few more minutes to put up with this. My statement of the week, and you know me, Tom, I love a lot of sports. You know me, I've watched a lot of sports. I've covered a lot of games as a sportscaster. I've watched a lot of games as a fan. I've played in games as a high school, middle school athlete. I've been an official, umpired
Mhm.
games. I have seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands of sports games. I have never seen a better sports game in my life than the Argentina France World Cup final. This match had it all. You had the stars, Messi and Mbappe, the old generation, the new generation. They both delivered in the game, by the way. Are you kidding me? Messi got
Yeah.
2 goals, then a penalty goal for a third goal that obviously doesn't count. Mbappe had 3 goals, got a fourth penalty goal. I mean, the ball was just getting the back of the net left and right. Argentina up 2-0 with about 10 minutes to go minus stoppage time. France scores 2 goals in 2 minutes to tie it up. Then we go to the extra time. So many chances for Argentina to score, so many for France that were just so close, neither team scoring. Messi scores with about, like 7, 8 minutes left to give Argentina a 3-2 lead. Here you think this team almost blew the World Cup. They should have won the World Cup. They take the lead. It's over now. Then there is also a third goal for France on a lucky ball that hits the player on the hand. Penalty for France, 3-3. Argentina was the better team for most of regulation. Looks like they're going to lose. All of a sudden, in the extra time, my heart almost stops, Tom. Argentina, 1-on-1. Emiliano Martinez makes the greatest save in soccer history to save the country, to lift Argentina to the shootout. And then the shootout was fantastic. He made another save. France misses one. Argentina wins in penalties. It was unbelievable. Keep this in mind in soccer, Tom. Soccer has become largely tactical. The World Cup final, and in saying this, the 2018 World Cup final was also high scoring. But 2014, 1-0. 2010, 1-0. 2006, 1-1 go to penalties. 2002, 2-0. 94 was 0-0. I mean, like the 1-0, I think, was in 90, maybe something like that. Like, it is a very tactical final. It is not typically the most aesthetically pleasing thing to watch because both
Mhm.
teams are so cautious. And that's how the first 20 minutes or so started of this match. But once Argentina scored early, opened up the match, was very exciting. Back and forth, end-to-end action. 3-3 in a World Cup final does not happen. It was like
Yeah.
in the modern game. It had all the drama, edge of your seat stuff, so many chances, 2 superstars playing at the highest level, 2 of the true blue bloods of soccer. I mean, it's basically like Kentucky and Duke playing for a national championship and, having 2 of the best players in the country going back and forth. This guy scores, that guy scores. Who's got the answer? Who's got the finish? And when you put it into perspective, Tom, this is not just me saying this. Lionel Messi now is considered as probably the greatest soccer player ever. I know some folks will still go Pele, some will go Maradona, but this right here, if you had to vote, he would get less than 50% of the vote, but he would probably be the most voted player as the best ever in soccer
Mhm.
history. If you polled fans and journalists, I've read these polls online. This basically took him from maybe the third or fourth best ever to the best ever, which again is a debate in its own. I don't think one game, one tournament should decide that. But now Messi's got the World Cup and just what it means for his legacy. And he is the most popular athlete in the history of sports. I mean, he's got 8 of the top 20 most liked Instagram posts. His post of holding the World Cup trophy has beaten the egg on Instagram, Tom Castleman. You know it's a big deal. So just what that game meant. Yeah, there's the egg photo, like the Instagram egg photo was the most liked photo in Instagram history. Just a photo of the egg. Everyone liked it, and Messi has passed it up. So, but I'm just saying, like, just what it means to soccer fans, what it means for his legacy, what it means for me. But to be honest with you, if Argentina won 2-0, Messi then would have had the golden boot for most goals because Mbappe scores those 3 goals late to pass him up. It would have probably been a cleaner finish for myself, for my bets as well. But the fact that they choked the lead made it ever more dramatic. It was kind of one of those, like, here we go again, because Argentina played, with Messi, they've played in 3 Copa America finals, 2 while he was in his prime. No, it's 4. But they had lost 3 of them. They won 1, but they'd been to this stage before. They dominated against Chile, went to penalties twice, lost twice. Germany, extra time in the World Cup, lose 1-0. So it was one of those things, like, it felt like it was Messi's moment, but then it didn't. Like, when France tied the game 2-2, Tom, I thought it was over. I thought we were toast. I thought the game was over multiple times. Argentina goes up 2-0. I'm like, shut it down, game over. France ties it 2-2. I'm like, France got this now. Then Argentina goes up 3-2. I'm like, it's over. Argentina's got it. There's 7 minutes to go. And then France scores again. It's like, oh. And then they have that last second chance. It's like, it's over. And then I finally did believe Argentina would win because Emiliano Martinez is a national hero, a world hero. You know how there's like guys who are specialists at stuff?
Sure.
He's a penalty kick specialist. He's a very good goalie, but if you were picking the top 5, 10 goalies in the world, you might not put him in that list. But if you're picking one goalie for a penalty kick shootout, there is not a single goalie, maybe of all time, I'm taking over him. He gets in these guys' heads. He intimidates the players. He's got so much swag and confidence. The research, the gut, the instinct, the luck to know where to dive. This man is out there diving the right way almost every time. Even when he doesn't save it, it's like so close to saving it. So when it went to penalties, I was like, okay, we got this. We got Emiliano. But just, my dad, Tom, who is not really a sports fan, he was pacing nervously watching the game. He couldn't watch it. My girlfriend was pacing nervously. I was almost having a heart attack. It was like, and think about how 4 billion people watched this, and 4 billion people had the same emotions. And it was like most of the world was cheering for Messi in Argentina, but if you were cheering for France, you had the same emotions on the other side.
Sure, yeah.
If you were neutral, you were just taking it all in, being like, oh my God, this is crazy. Think about this. You know Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco?
Yeah.
So he was actually an analyst for Fox Sports for the World Cup. They had him on their pregame show, their postgame shows, rather. He's a huge soccer fan, obsessed with soccer. So Chad Johnson said this, Tom. It was a better game than any NFL game he's ever played in or watched. He himself called it the greatest sports game of all time. And he comes from a guy who likes football and soccer, as I like to think I do as well. So just the best game ever. I don't know if it's ever going to be topped. It was just unbelievable. I mean, we had people who weren't even soccer fans that said, yeah, this is the real deal. So it was incredible.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah. So I think that's a good cap, I think, right?
I think that's the perfect way to cap a great show, great year, and looking forward to the next one.
All right, let's go. Thank you, Tom. Thank you to everyone who watches and listens. Haven't had as many shows of late, but we're going to work hard on trying to get the show back to every week. I know for sure next week, Tom, the plan is to have a show. Looking forward to talking all about the College Football National Championship, all about who's going to get in the NFL playoffs, all that and more. Cannot wait. We'll see you guys next week.